Welcome to Face the State. It is June 29th, and stop me if you've heard this before, but it looks like the state budget is going to be late again. It needs to be done by the end of the day on Monday, and we are sitting down with the top two members of the House Appropriations Committee. We want to know, what's the deal with this process? How much money is the state going to end up spending? Plus, he has listed on the ballot, well, he is, I should say, as a Democrat, but his popularity is really surging among those on the other side of the aisle. Why Pennsylvania Republicans are siding with Senator John Fetterman, the political insiders are standing by, answering that question and many more.
CBS 21 News presents Face the State with Joel D. Smith, a look at the issues and politics that shape Pennsylvania.
Thank you for joining us. As you can tell, I'm not Joel D. Smith. I'm Candace Scalese. I'm filling in for him today, so we appreciate you tuning in. You know, tomorrow is the budget deadline, and as it's quickly approaching, I sat down with one of the top Democrats negotiating the final product. Here's my conversation with House Appropriations Chairman Jordan Harris in his office at the state capitol. So Senate Majority Leader Joe Pittman is saying the budget is going to be late this year. What are some of the things that you guys are still working out? What do you think needs to happen in order to meet that deadline on Monday?
Well, listen, we could have gotten the budget done on time, and we still, if we wanted to, and if folks are willing to come, our friends on the other side are willing to come over the weekend and get it done, we could do that. I mean, the bottom line is we've been consistent as a caucus on where we are and what the issues are and what we need in a budget and an investment plan in Pennsylvania. And so, look, we stand ready to continue to negotiate so that we can get that plan done for the people of Pennsylvania.
Are there any things in particular that you guys are really holding on to that is just like a stronghold for Democrats or for the House itself that you want to see in this budget?
Yeah, I don't think I would call anything a stronghold. What I would say is there are things that are important to us that need to happen. And quite honestly, let's be honest, not just important to our caucus, but to all Pennsylvania. Look, we have a Commonwealth Court ruling that says how we fund education is unconstitutional. So we have a responsibility to continue to deal with that, and that's what we would like to do in our education funding. But I think everybody all over the Commonwealth knows how important mass transit is to Pennsylvania. And listen, this is not just about one region. This is not just about, urban areas or suburban areas. But the truth is, because of mass transit, we have an economic engine that provides resources all over Pennsylvania. And now when you look at the transportation bill that the House passed, it also includes money for roads and bridges, which is much needed in many parts of rural Pennsylvania.
I know that you mentioned just education there. Adequacy payments were something that were in the budget last year. Is that something that you guys are pushing for this year as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, with from court, we have to do this. And quite honestly, taxpayers at home who have been wondering why their property tax or their school taxes continue to increase. Well, this is why. Because we haven't been doing what's necessary at the state level. Over the last two cycles, we have begun to make a significant down payment, and we need to continue with that process.
Republicans have mentioned some structural deficit if we keep spending the way that we have, and says that there need to be some cuts. Do you agree that we could be in a deficit in the next few years?
Well, listen, we understand the fiscal outlook of the Commonwealth, but we also know what we hear at the federal level. I mean, everyone says at the federal level that we're going to have the most robust economy that we've ever seen nationally. So you have to pick one or the other. Either we're going to have the most robust economy nationally, and that's going to trickle down to Pennsylvania, or we have a structural deficit that we need to address. So I think folks need to decide which talking point they're going to go after. Here's what I do know. What I do know is that investing in Pennsylvania's children, investing in Pennsylvania's mass transit, and investing in Pennsylvania's health care is an extremely important thing that I think all Pennsylvanians agree to. And so we're laser beam focused on making the investments, but also making the investments that we believe have a return. And so that's why we've been in favor of other things like a C&I reduction and different things to make Pennsylvania business friendly. We can do both. We can take care of the obligations that we have to Pennsylvanians while also making Pennsylvania a place where people want to work, live, and raise family.
When you're talking about all these investments, of course, that takes money. So where do those funds come from? Is it because I know that there's been talk about legalizing marijuana, and there's been talk about skill games. There's still not a full there's not agreement on both of those issues. So where does this money come from? I know the governor is proposing a $51.1 billion budget. He did that in February. So what is the plan to make sure that we don't enter into that deficit?
So the House passed legalization of adult use cannabis over to the Senate, and they've made decisions on what they want to do over there, but we've passed the bill over there. They just passed us something on gaming, so we'll be looking at, what we're doing in the gaming space. So we know that we need to generate revenue. I don't think we're in a disagreement there. And we're ready to negotiate what that revenue looks like. But here's what I want people to start thinking about. What does disinvestment look like? And how much does disinvestment cost us? And far too often, we don't have that conversation. When we don't invest in mass transit and those transit agencies begin to fall apart, how does that affect the economy? What does it look like when people can't get back and forth to work? What does it look like when seniors can't get back and forth to their doctor's appointments? How does that affect the bottom line financially of the Commonwealth? There are far too many things where if you don't make the significant investments, you'll end up paying much more on the back end.
With that $51.1 billion proposal from the governor, how close do you think you guys are going to get? Do you think that we're going to have a budget that is around $50 billion?
Look, I don't like to draw lines in the sand and talk about this is the number, that's the number. Here's what I know. We're committed to having a budget that works for all Pennsylvanians, that invests in the areas that we know, one, need to be invested in, and two, have a long-term positive impact on us as a Commonwealth. And so what that number needs to be, we're willing to and looking forward to negotiating over. But we know that there are things that must be invested in order for the Commonwealth to continue to move in the right direction.
Now, we have this deadline on the 30th. How important is that deadline? Because I know time and time again, we just kind of watch it pass. Typically, it's a few weeks late, something like that. We don't see chaos. But how important is Monday?
Well, listen, there are some things that need to happen by Monday, and we look forward to getting those things done. Here's what I will say. One of the things I've been consistent in saying this, I'd much rather have a budget that represents our values and the values of Pennsylvanians than a budget on June 30th. And so while I would love to meet this June 30th time frame, I want to make sure that we have a budget that makes the correct investments in Pennsylvania that'll help us grow and continue to grow as a Commonwealth.
Do you feel like you guys are close?
Well, look, here's an interesting thing about when folks ask, are we close? If you've seen this the budget process in prior years, it could seem like we're miles apart. And then within 6 to 12 hours, things happen, and now all of a sudden you see bills flying between the House and the Senate. So I don't get into the are we close or not, because the truth is, we could get a budget knocked down because we have a lot of the vehicles in place. We just need to make sure that it gets done and that it invests in Pennsylvanians in the correct way.
Anything I didn't ask you that you want to add ahead of Monday?
I'm sleepy. I need a nap.
Do you have anything, Tyler, that you want to
I
add?
want a nap.
Yeah, all joking aside there, I think Representative Harris deserves a nap. He has been working a lot, as all of our senators and representatives have. So that was him speaking with me candidly, the Democratic chair of the House Appropriations Committee. So coming up, we're going to hear from the Republican chair, where he says budget negotiations stand as he takes on the budget battle for the first time from the top of the committee. Welcome back. Joining us, the Republican chair of the House Appropriations Committee, Indiana County Representative Jim Struzzi. So thank you for joining us. You just listened to our interview with your colleague. What's your response to some of his claims and what he has to say about this budget on Monday?
Well, interestingly enough, I agree with Chairman Harris on a lot of the points that he made. We do have needs that are out there that we have to meet. The question is, where does that funding come from? And I think the challenge we all face as lawmakers is that the governor has proposed a $51.5 billion spending proposal, the largest ever in Pennsylvania history, at a time when we know revenues aren't even going to come close to meeting that amount. So where does that money come from? That is the challenge that we face.
And how do you propose addressing that? Do we raise taxes? Do we trim certain programs? Where do we find that money? Because we know skill games hasn't passed, the marijuana legislation hasn't passed, and that was a big deal, the marijuana legislation, when the governor proposed his budget.
Yeah, I think we all realize that the recreational marijuana is not going to happen, at least not during this budget cycle. Skill games are still definitely a point of discussion that we have to continue. We, from a House Republican standpoint, feel that we can help meet some of these gaps in our budget by really rolling back some government regulations, allowing business and economic investment in Pennsylvania to thrive, and mainly by unleashing our energy industry. So for many years now, we have stifled growth in the energy sector through things like the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative and the other proposals that the governor has out there that really push this investment, this $1 billion of investment in energy production and manufacturing and AI development to other states, mainly Ohio, West Virginia, and Texas, when we know we have abundant natural resources right under our feet here in Pennsylvania. So we feel that if we were to end some of this bad policy that pushes business investment, energy investment to other states, get rid of those bad ideas and let these investments come back to Pennsylvania, we'll see our revenues get to the point where we can fund all these things that are necessary within state government. We understand the needs in our communities.
As you mentioned that, Homer City, we know in your district in Indiana County,
Yes.
Homer City, is going to be reopening soon. Is that part of this plan to bring that money in?
Well, absolutely. I think that's a great example of what we could see across this Commonwealth. Homer City is unique because they already have the infrastructure there. It was a coal-fired electric generation plant. But this company sees the potential here in Pennsylvania. They're investing billions of dollars, and it's just down the road from the office that I'm sitting in right now. It's going to bring thousands of jobs to our region. We think we could see that mirrored across this Commonwealth if we streamline the permitting process, if we expedite those permits, if we open the door, get rid of these things like the Reggie proposal and the PACER and the press thing that really make the playing field unlevel for these types of investments, and we allow it to come on its own. It wants to be here. These are global companies that want to come to Pennsylvania because we have the natural resources right here. So
we are talking about a lot of plants, power plants, Crane Clean Energy, opening up TMI Unit 1. So that's your plan for generating more money if we do enter into this deficit, if we keep spending like a lot of Republicans are saying. But what does education funding look like? We are looking at another increase, another round of adequacy payments. That's what Representative Harris said. Is that something that you think is going to be in this budget?
Well, it's clearly going to be part of the discussion. You know, the governor has again proposed some significant increases in education funding. We want to make sure that we're providing the best funding we can in the best possible manner and focused on the student, not necessarily the institution, but on the student. And we know that, education funding, the opinions vary widely as far as, how that should be invested, how that should be used. We feel that every student should have the best possible opportunity for a quality education, no matter where they live in this Commonwealth. The adequacy funding is a challenge because you ask some of our local school districts in the rural areas, and they don't think it's adequate at all because the funding gaps are still there. There's a disparity about what school districts get what funding. So I think we really need to take a close look at that. But again, that's going to be part of the discussions. I know we're just a day or two away from the budget deadline, but I agree with Chairman Harris. We shouldn't be rushing into something that is so vitally important, and we're talking about billions in taxpayer dollars. We need to use those in the most efficient and effective manner that we can. Is it going to be close to the $51 billion that the governor proposed? Well, I think it's really hard to say. There's a lot of discussions that still need to occur. We'd like to see our economy grow. We'd like to see, as I said, government get out of the way in some cases, and bring jobs and investment back to Pennsylvania. That's really what we need to see happen here in the future. But we know that there are fundamental needs out there. We understand the importance of transit, healthcare across the board. But again, we think that we need to push Pennsylvania in the right direction so that when it comes to meeting these needs, we have the resources that we need to meet those needs. Even being across the aisle, it sounds like you guys are trying to work together, right? One of the biggest challenges with working in a government. When it comes to your leadership position, how has this changed your view, this budget process, and how important is this deadline for Monday, tomorrow? This is my first time as the appropriations chairman for the Republican caucus, and I am extremely honored to have this position. I think you look at things, I've been on the appropriations committee since I took office back in 18, but you have to look at things from a balance point. What is good for the entire Commonwealth? And a lot of times you'll see, particular regions or particular special interests come in that want this or that, but we have to look at it from a more holistic perspective as to what is good for this entire Commonwealth. And it can't just be about this year's budget. It has to be about the budgets in the future. The governor has proposed, as part of this spending proposal, draining down our surplus and tapping into our rainy day fund. Those are our reserves for the future. And we really cannot manage state government in that manner, because we do have to look ahead to what the few outlying years mean for Pennsylvania. So again, that's why we feel we need to start growing our revenues to meet those needs without draining our reserves.
Really appreciate your time with us this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Good
Sure.
luck in the next few days. Hopefully we will have a budget tomorrow, June 30th. If not, we'll stay on top of it and let everyone know what happens. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
All right. Thank you.
Well, the CBS 21 political insiders standing by. They are responding to this budget talk, and Senator John Fetterman there. There's some new polling that's coming out, and he's apparently more popular with Republicans than Democrats. So what does this mean for him in purple Pennsylvania? Welcome back. I'm joined by CBS 21 political insiders, Democratic strategist Mark Singal and Republican strategist Mike Regan. I was just telling them these cameras are far away and I cannot read, but we don't have to do that anymore. We're going to talk about the budget. So let's talk about those interviews. What was your first response and reaction to what was just discussed?
Well, I think that both chairmen indicated that they were willing to talk to each other.
Yeah, which was good. We don't always have that.
I was impressed that they were kind of agreeing that there are priorities that they both have, but they can work it out. So it seems pretty simple to me. The governor's proposed $51 billion. The Republicans want it under 50. Get it under 50 and we can make a deal.
Yeah. What is your reaction? Do you think that we're going to really have to dip into this rainy day fund to find that $50 billion?
Look, I just want to say one thing. Is 12 years ago, when I was a brand new member of the House of Representatives, the budget was just eclipsing $30 billion.
Wow.
And people were outraged about that. Now, Governor, yours was like $100 when you first got there.
$37.
Yeah.
But I think that that $50 billion is a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people in the Republicans in the Senate and the House. So I think he's probably right. I think 45 would be ideal, but we'll see what happens.
And just one more thing. They have an added kind of incentive, and that's they've got $11 billion in the rainy day fund. There is a surplus. But the Republicans are right. You don't want to spend that all down. You want to deal with the structural deficit going forward as well.
Yeah.
Everybody's making good points. I think we should be able to get this done.
It sounds like it's not going to take months on end, right? Like it has, I think it was 2016 where it was 9 months or something crazy like that. So it sounds like it's going to pass. The question is when. It's supposed to happen tomorrow. We'll see what happens. I want to talk a little bit about some other topics right now, because on Friday, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a major ruling. It was on nationwide injunctions. The 6-3 vote Friday limits federal judges' ability to block nationwide enforcement of executive orders. That includes getting rid of birthright citizenship. There are concerns among the justices about what would happen if the administration were allowed to deny citizenship to children born to parents in the country illegally. Now, the justices made no ruling on specifically whether birthright citizenship is constitutional and stopped the order from taking effect for 30 days. Giving you a little background here, in a dissenting opinion, Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote, quote, "No right is safe in the new legal regime the court creates. Today, the threat is to birthright citizenship, and tomorrow, a different administration may try to seize firearms from law-abiding citizens or prevent people of certain faiths from gathering to worship." President Trump speaking earlier Friday, calling the ruling a celebration and a giant win. Mike, what do you think about this? Is this a giant win for Republicans and for the Trump administration?
I think it's a giant win for everybody. Look, I think that if you look at, the fact that any district court judge from anywhere can enter an opinion which has an impact on the on the president's ability to implement an agenda, I think that was very dangerous. And they were doing it over and over and over again. Usually it was about ideology and less about constitutionality. So I think the court's made a very wise decision there. And as it relates to birthright citizenship, I think that's somewhat muddled. They said they're going to approach it in a case-by-case basis, which I think is smart. They looked at it more from an immigration standpoint, less from a constitutionality standpoint.
Which I think is something that they're going to continue to look at. They have that 30 days. What was your reaction to this, Mark, with a lot of judges nationwide challenging executive orders?
The flaw in the decision by the Supreme Court is that they are closing their eyes to the very stark language in the Constitution. Birthright citizen is a part of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, period, end of story. They could have made that definitive announcement alongside of all of the other changes that they're talking about with regard to district courts. They failed to do that and opened the door a crack to somebody defying the Constitution. That is unforgivable, and it's wrong for the Supreme Court to even countenance the possibility of violating the Constitution.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that after those 30 days. So we're going to wait and see. I want to move on. Senator John Fetterman making some news because recent polling of Pennsylvanians is showing he is actually more popular among Republicans than Democrats. Okay, so I don't know if you're surprised by this. I was like, okay, that makes sense to me based on some things that we've heard. So Susquehanna polling found 45% of Republicans approve of the senator's performance. Only 40% of Democrats approve of his performance. So, Mark, how do you view the senator right now?
Maybe he's on to something.
In this purple state, right, where we have a little bit of both.
It's a purple state, and John Fetterman is the ultimate purple politician.
He really is, yeah.
And what I'm encouraged about is that that's an awful lot of MAGA types that are saying, you know what? Maybe these Democrats aren't too evil.
Yeah,
maybe it's a pattern that other Democrats can follow.
What do you think, though, from the Republican side?
Well, I've known him for about 8 years.
Okay.
And I think if we sat down together and whatever the issues, we'd agree less than half the time.
Sure.
But he's an independent thinker. And I think that's what appeals to Republicans. Is like he's not just going to toe the party line no matter what it is. I think he's thinking about it and coming up with his own opinion. And I think it's very appealing to many people.
He does seem to vote. Recently, he did actually not alongside every single Democrat. We know that there might be a few outsiders here and there. So that's what I think Republicans are seeing a lot of. There was a Pew Research Center that put out some new data that shows how the 2024 presidential election went. And Trump's coalition, he basically has the most racially and ethnically diverse group voting for him. So among Hispanic voters, that increased 3% up to 10%. On the Democratic side, Kamala Harris saw a decrease of voters. Do you think that this is something that just happened in 2024? Or do you think this is a trend for the Democratic or Republican Party?
Well, I do think it is a trend. And I do think from a Democrat point of view, it is a little bit disturbing, because Donald Trump did get a higher percentage of black vote and Latino votes than any other Republican has in a long time.
Yeah, I got to switch over to you. Because
it was a message. It was Trump's message. He captured the working man by his message, by saying we're going to bring jobs back. We're going to increase income. We're going to let people decide where they want to go to school. We're going to do all these things. That was the message that the working man, typically the Democratic voter, heard,
and that's why
in the black and brown voters, and that's why they got those votes.
All right,
the message was good.
We got to head to break. Sorry to cut you guys off. We could talk about all these topics a lot more, but we're going to be back with a final word, so stick around. Well, Joel D. going to be back next week, but I want to thank these guys for not being too hard on me. I want to thank you for watching with us today. July 4th coming up. Any plans?
Nope. Just going to hang out with the family.
Hang out with the family?
I'm going to the White House.
All right.
I'm going to the White House for a cookout out on the South Lawn. I'm looking forward to it.
Enjoy. Take some pictures for us.
Thanks. We'll do.
Those of us hanging out in Harrisburg and throughout Central PA. Again, thank you for joining us. Have a safe and fun Sunday. Hope you get to spend time with your family. We will see you next time right here on Face the State.